Welcome to Zeros to Ones Office Hours. I'm Scott Markovitz, and I've been building startups for the past 12 plus years as a first and early hire and as a fractional leader. To date, I've worked with around 2,000 startups, including a few unicorns and successful exits. Over the past 10 years, I've done over 1,000 office hours, sharing advice with founders around growing their startups from 0 to 1 and beyond. Whether go-to-market, ideation, growth strategies, sales and pricing, UI, UX, product strategy, and just about everything except for writing code. This show is all about making these conversations public so we can learn out loud together. Each episode, an early stage founder, just like you, will join to work through their biggest blocker, knowing that there are many other founders out there with the same issue in the same position. This is my effort to give back to the community. You can sign up for my daily curated newsletter that shares the advice that you need to grow your startup from 0 to 1 without all the noise. Go to zeros2ones.com. Hey, Alex, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
I am pretty well, thank you. Yourself?
Doing well. I appreciate it. I love the background. It looks like you are in a loft somewhere. So maybe usually the way I will probably introduce these shows is telling you a little bit about yourself, introducing yourself, where you're from, tell us a little bit about the startup that you're working on, and we'll dive into that one pressing question issue in the conversation.
So I'm Alex Feltwell. I'm chief exec of Share with Marvin Limited. We are a social media management startup similar to Hootsuite. We've got a couple of unique features in there that we're hoping to disrupt that market. You're right, I am in a loft. It's home-based office, and yeah, I'm on the top floor. Lovely view out over the Lincolnshire countryside here in the UK.
Nice. What part of the UK? I know the big cities I know often, but what parts of the country are you in?
So about 100 miles outside London, a small country village called Spalding. Nearest major cities, probably Peterborough.
Okay, very nice. Those little places in the middle of nowhere, that's my dream, is to be out there in the middle of nowhere all the time.
Yeah, we moved here back end of 2022 after a pandemic scuppered move to New Zealand fell through. So this was
And
plan B.
interesting. Was it scuppered because of the laws and regulations of getting in? Because I believe at the beginning of the
Yeah.
pandemic, they didn't allow anybody in, and that's why I think the first
Yeah, that
wave, they
was
didn't have
exactly
any
it.
cases. Okay, okay. Right, probably not a bad choice. Maybe not as
Yeah, so
beautiful
this
scenery,
was
but
plan, but it's worked out well in the long run. So quite happy about with how it's worked out.
amazing, amazing. So yeah, let's dive into the specific question. Maybe you can kind of talk through what that challenge you're trying to get some advice on, and maybe give a little bit of context of where you are, what challenges you've kind of run into, what you bump into, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, sure. So the challenge that I'd like to talk about today really is when you've got a startup and you're going into an existing market. So as I said, we're coming up with the likes of Hootsuite, Social Pilot, obviously reasonably mature products that have got very rich feature sets right across the whole value chain. We're going in there and we don't have everything from day one. So how do we manage that? How do we break in with new customers? How do we manage that expectation around, features that are coming down the line, and building all that in really? Because, as a startup, you don't have everything that's there. And, it's a sort of a challenge that I personally have never encountered before. This is a first time founder experience.
Fantastic. Yeah. Something that it's pretty common that I hear. Again, I've spoken to at this point in 10, 11 years, 2,000 founders and startups. So it's something that I've heard more than once, and I'm more than happy to talk through it. To start with, usually what I would say for people who are entering in a crowded market, number one, there's no issue with going to a crowded market. The idea of first in, I don't think that's actually relevant anymore. I think if you look at probably today, the biggest, most successful startups, software startups, your Salesforce, your HubSpot, your Zendesk, right? Those were first in 16 to 20 years ago after the dot-com bubble crash. There was no investing. There was nobody building startups. So they were able to get in, take the entire space, game over. But outside of that, I don't think that's really realistic anymore. That kind of the first mover advantage. I think maybe a while, but I think a lot of times what we see is the second or third mover tends to be more successful because they see what the first mover is lacking and where their issues are. And then they go tackle those issues to build a better experience and a better product to then take the market away from that original one. But the first one, so I think we'll focus on 2 points. Number one, solving a problem, right? And the biggest piece, the world doesn't need more products, right? We'll say that the world doesn't need more social media management platforms, but there's existing issues that exist with these current platforms, and the focus needs to be on the messaging they have, and especially for the functionality that you've built. Is what are you solving that's lacking, in those tools? I've used a bunch of them. Some of them all have different feature sets. It's hitting that message of, hey, what pain point are we solving
Yep.
here with this specific tool? And maybe kind of talk through maybe some of the features that you've built. Again, how are they different? Because you said there are some features that are different. So let me
Yeah,
maybe share some insights with
absolutely.
that.
So that solving a problem is really how the product came about in the first place. We were approached by who are now the sponsoring client. There were a number of challenges that they saw with the existing tools that were out there. The first one really was the time taken. So, you've got an ever growing list of social media platforms that are out there. They've all got different rules and styles and things like that you've got to conform with, image
Yep.
requirements, character limits, this type of thing. And the tools are sort of saying, well, you've got to create this version and that version, and you can handle the engagement in a consolidated manner, but there's no real efficiency up the front end. So that was one of the main pain points that we were being asked to solve. And then the second one was around the expansion into wider markets. So if you look at a lot of the tools that are out there, they tend to focus on probably around sort of 6 or 7 of the mainstream social media that are out there. And the particular client that we're working with wants to be able to expand into the Asian market in particular,
Mm.
and having tools that actually are able to address that market particularly well don't
Yep.
really exist either. And then the final challenge that they had really was on the analytics side of things. So, you can have a look at how your Facebook posts are performing, or your LinkedIn, but there's nothing that actually does it on what we actually call total reach. So this is
Okay.
where you've got a set of posts that are of the same intent, but they're sort of tailored for that specific platform. So you might have an X
Sure.
post that comes in at under 280 characters, and then you've got a LinkedIn post that's longer
Yep.
form, and so on. And being able to roll those up and provide those insights all
Mm.
together. So these were the challenges that nothing really out there was solving. And
Yep.
down the line, we intend to actually use those problems that we're solving to then take it a step further and integrate it with AI that then
Yep.
enables us to say, right, okay, well, we've got all this information and these rules and how they perform. Actually, let's go and produce that content even more efficiently, so we can say,
Mhm.
right, you write once and you then get all the free content out of that
Yep.
off the back of it, because all that sort of language model has been built up in the background. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So the first thoughts that I have is, number one, if you're specifically, let's say, trying to target the Asian market, like that's going to be your first go-to market. All the effort, the ads, and the engagement are going to be in the APAC region. Then that's probably your H1 header that you go with, because you're specifically targeting that region and those tools that the other products don't support. If you're going to be more agnostic and going everywhere, but just want to obviously support those APAC favorite tools, you do. I would suggest one thing, and then something on it beyond it. Having as many conversations with social media marketers now, of talking through those pain points. Tell me how painful this point is, and I can at least talk about I feel pain from both the first and the third point. I'm not a social media marketer. I don't do this for a living. I do this for my own type of content that I do every day. I run into, right. I've been challenged. Do I write the LinkedIn post and I create a video for here? I have so much time in the
Yep.
day. I do coaching. I do embedded leadership. I don't have the time for content creation. There's probably plenty of people like me, maybe not in companies, but in freelancers, fractional people who just don't have endless amounts of life. This is not what we do for 8 hours a day. Where my ideal, what I would love to see is, hey, let me create this conversation here, right? We're recording a conversation, and it's however long it is, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. I would love to have this recording, and then in one tool be able to say, create me 3 YouTube shorts, create me with the right description, the right timeline. Same thing, Instagram. Give me the right content and description, all the information that goes into Instagram, right? Hashtags for Instagram. TikTok, the same thing. But I found out the last couple of days while trying to upload my 58, 59-second videos that are going to YouTube Shorts and Instagram without an issue to TikTok, I didn't notice after like struggling for a few days that there's a 10 megabyte limit of a
Yep.
file size on TikTok. My files are 12 meg, 11 point something. So they don't even give you an error message, right? It's just uploading and it seems like it goes like, oh, fantastic. So
Yep.
now I need to take that video that worked on 2 or 3 platforms, down, compress the file down just to create another file, just to go to TikTok. Like, I don't want to do that, right? In that same type of
Yep.
sense, right? You automatically compress said video down or shorts down to 10 megabyte to then go to TikTok and be pushed to TikTok. Same for LinkedIn. Hey, for this content, summarize it, create bullet points, create a viral post in LinkedIn. The fact that I need to do all of these things manually, yes, ChatGPT
Yep.
helps, tools like that help, but everything is still manual where I take a LinkedIn or I take a video. Or now I think what I've started with is taking a LinkedIn post, put it in chat GPT. Okay, now rewrite this as a Twitter thread. Great. Wonderful. Now
Yeah,
rewrite it
exactly.
is a 59-second script for Instagram. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now it's like 3 different steps. I got to copy paste, move around. All that's heavy lifting. I personally have that issue. Again, I'm creating a limited amount of content myself, but for someone who's dealing with this on a regular basis, right, the pain point must be exponentially greater. To your third point,
Absolutely.
of it's the same thing, right? So every day I have a topic, right? Is the topic of whatever the content I put out on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn and whatever. And yes, I could have analytics on LinkedIn, this many impressions, da 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 da. But have like that way to could branch them all up. Oh, on the conversation that AI is going to be the startup graveyard of 2025. This is how many impressions or likes or whatever you had across the entire campaign or the entire post. I don't like that's definitely extremely valuable to me to know. Okay, a yes, it's good on channels, right? Some channels working better than others, but it also guides me to what type of content works better in general. Which
Yep.
again, if I have to
Exactly.
break down, right? Because then if you're going to find out, oh, this type of content works on LinkedIn, and this one, you're going to be all day long. You'd be creating all different types of content for different channels that work here that don't work there. Like that's a pain in the ass. So the first recommendation is having those conversations, saying, hey, these are like the 2 points. Again, assuming it's not just APAC focused that we're going to focus on that we want to solve. Tell us on a scale from 1 to 10 how painful it is. How much extra time do you spend every day using, like doing these processes? What tools do you find out? And re emphasize that in the questions that you ask in the interviews that you have, you want to guide what kind of guide them, or you just want to poke them, right? Oh, no, we've been speaking to tons of social media managers about creating content. And yes, all these products allow you to repurpose content. But repurposing content is not really repurposing content. No, repurposing content is I do it once and then everything's done automatically for me. How
Yep.
long does it take you? How much effort does it take you? How many people are involved? Really like, gently asking
Yeah.
those right
All the
questions.
different tool sets.
Correct. Like which one's using, how much time does it, what tool do you use to take the Instagram file and then convert it down to a smaller file size to then put to like just
Yeah.
poking that pain
Yeah.
point. So you're reminding them, oh yeah, this is a real pain in the ass here. And this spends so much time. And the same thing for the analytic piece. So when you find, I
Yeah, because
think,
our aim is for us to become a one-stop shop effectively. So
mhm,
you can get all your analytics, all the
yep,
tooling, everything in there. So you've only got to go into the one product that delivers everything. And eventually down the line, we want to turn it into an ecosystem.
yep,
So say, for example, you want some bespoke video content that's going to be created. And you can then reach out to firms to produce or freelancers to produce that content for you. And then
yep,
eventually, once that's ready, that comes into your asset library, it's available, and on you go with your day. You don't have to worry about all this sort of
yep,
how am I going to coordinate it because everything is just in there. And it then is reusable for you as and when you want to repurpose that
yep,
content as well. That's the grand scheme of things. We've got really, really sort of lofty ambitions of what we want to do with it, and we've laid the foundations. But it's the how do you take those great ideas and then start to build a business along the way when you haven't got everything.
yep,
I'm sure if I sort of rocked up to anybody and said, we've got this platform that does everything that I want it to do in the
yep,
long term, they'll go, sold, I'll take it from you. It's a no-brainer. when you're starting out, you obviously don't have everything there, and it's, how do
Yeah.
you sort of reward those initial adopters,
Yeah.
and how do you price along the way? If that
Absolutely. So the messaging that you use is, again, once you've tested those two options, which one's more painful, that's your messaging. That's your H1, that's your H2, real repurposing, right? Create once, distribute, and whatever, ultimately, and endlessly, something like that, or whatever, the right H1, right H2 is, because that's what you're going to sell. Yes, if you're going to try to go to these companies and saying, "Oh, we're a social media platform with a calendar and things like that," they're going to be like, "Oh, another one? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I already have Hootsuite. I already have Buffer. I already have this one. Okay, not interested." But if you go for that specific point, hey, we repurpose it like endlessly with one click, right? Only do it once. No resizing, no compressing. One button creates your LinkedIn post, resizes your TikTok thing, it compresses this, da, da, da. That's the message you go on, because that's the pain point. That's the pain point that they're feeling. They're using Hootsuite, they're using Social Pile, they're using all the ones. They're having that friction. They're having that pain point every day of having to spend another 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is, doing all that extra work, creating different versions for all these different platforms. That's the one
Yeah.
point you hit. You poke that over and over and over again, because that's what people are going to rely on. Because, hey, I don't need another calendar. I already got one, and it's good,
No,
right? The calendar,
no,
the calendar,
exactly.
the calendar features work, but I have a lot of pain of having to do this, repurpose this content over and over and over again. Oh, if you can fix that point, I don't even care about the calendar. If you could just fix that point where I could just do that, I'm already sold. Oh, and you also can then schedule for me. Oh, that's fantastic. That's where you get where these signed up. Let's now pivot to the monetary side. It's very interesting. For many years, myself included, many advisors and startup gurus always said that you can't win on price, right? You can't differentiate yourself on price. I no longer believe that. I'm now a believer that price can now be a differentiator. And we'll kind of go into the reasoning. When you're a VC backed company, right, you have a specific playbook that you have to run, right? You have to become a unicorn, you have to get an enterprise, you have to get in whatever. And then you get to the scenario, right, where the entry level pricing for Hootsuite, I think, is what, like 249 a month, like something, at least in dollars, like something quite
Yeah.
expensive. If you're a sizable startup or a company that has a nice budget, okay, yeah, 249 or however much it is, that's no problem. But if you're me, if you're one of the millions of founders, freelancers,
Yeah.
person at a one person shop of marketing who doesn't have $250, who doesn't want to spend $250, who doesn't even want to spend $60, price now is a differentiator. And I know even Buffer, like I'm a huge fan of, I've been a long time fan of Buffer, very much of a believer in a lot of stuff that they've spoken about over the years. And I know they have kind of pivoted their business, realizing, right, they're not VC backed, they don't have that interest, they want to be the tool for SMBs. But even their pricing, it's like, I think it's like something like $8, like a channel or whatever. And I was looking at it, I was looking at like four or five, something, six channels, and it was like $60 or something like that. Again, like for me,
Yeah.
the most important part to understand is you're only a piece of the puzzle, right? You're only a piece of the workflow, right? They need a tool to create the content. No, you're the place where we kind of like distribute it and repurpose it, but they need a place to create it. They need a place for this. So you're just a piece kind of in the pie. If now I need like four or five different tools in the marketing team, of course, let's not talk about content or anything else, and I got to spend
Yeah.
$500 a month just on marketing tools, like just don't have the budget for those things. And now if I
Yeah.
think you're coming in more at a price point, especially early on, where you can say, hey, we're also going to differentiate ourselves with price. That is definitely a differentiator for people, for the millions of people like me. And again, if you want to go the enterprise VC route, okay, they'll tell you something different, right? You got to charge a lot of money. If you're not going to go that route, I highly recommend don't go that route. There's a ton of people. Like I'm personally right now was looking up today tools on AppSumo, because I was looking up like lifetime deals for this exact product. Seriously, like 2 hours ago, I was looking up tools like this. There are
Yeah.
tons of people who are ready to buy this tool who don't want to spend, again, $60 a month. But if you do something good, like I'll give you an example, Canva, right? I use Canva for lots of kind of
Yeah.
creative stuff. It's $12 a month. something like that. So it's a piece of my pie, right? A piece of the process I do, but it's $12, and it gives me unlimited
Yeah.
everything I need to
And it
do
all
and
adds up.
resizing and all the stuff that Canva does, and it's $12. I can do that. I can afford that within my personal business, not making no
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars. Or so I would then we'll branch out the conversation. So I watched a great video. I'm happy to send it to you outside of this yesterday of the CEO of Tally. So Tally is a form builder, right? This is always one of my favorite examples of don't build these things, right? Problem versus product market fit. There's way too many form builders out there. So many have come my way. They bootstrapped the business with four people up to $50,000 in MRR like eight something months ago. They give almost all the product away for free, like almost total freemium plan. But if you want to connect it to your own domain, you want to have some like extra kind of features that maybe not necessarily everybody wants to use, it's $29 a month, right? Also $29. If you need to connect to your domain, you need to maybe do some like workflow stuff or afterwards, whatever kind of those additional features are. Yeah, probably $29 is not too bad. Maybe for a
Yeah.
personal person, it's maybe like at the limit, but especially for a team, anybody that has a team account or a team like credit card can pay $29 a month. And they've hit 50K. They're probably now beyond 50K because that was 8 months ago, the stock. So I think that even the idea of, in this point, I wouldn't go freemium. There could be some parts, and I think that's probably a deeper conversation of maybe like certain amount of networks, like I think some of them do for free. But I think you want to find either the one price that fits for like the SaaS model. Again, that Scott Markovitz, who's a fractional person, can use, or Scott Markovitz, the one marketing person at a 8-person startup can use, or one social media marketer and maybe at a bigger company can start using and then branch out to my organization. And the idea is kind of like the bottom up funnel approach, where you get into the hands, you don't make it too restrictive, you can get anyone to use it, get the value of it. And then once you have maybe in a bigger company where you have multiple social media people, or one person runs LinkedIn, and one person runs Facebook, and one person, okay, now then you have the ability to branch out and build into the team plans. So I think pricing is very important, and I would keep it on the low side so it's affordable, is an easy entry level. The other option, and I've actually been looking for startups and founders to join me on this mission of this one-time payment idea. I'm a big fan of Jason Fried and DHH. I think outside of maybe Elon and Steve Jobs, they're probably the oracles of the startup world, that they tend to be on the forefront of all these pivots before everybody else, right? They were the first ones doing remote. They were moving off of cloud storage back onto their own storage, right? Because we know how expensive AWS and those things can be. We're going to see a big move into them.
Mhm.
They created once.com. So one of their products is going to be a one-time fee only. I'm very fascinated by this idea. Again, I think we would have to have a conversation deeper on the value proposition. I think when it's business critical, it doesn't fall into this category, but maybe yes, maybe no. Again, probably not. But the idea of, hey, pay once, right? Pay, it could be, $2.99 for this one product. And right, it runs across all these different platforms and you get all these features, and version 1 to version 2, and then maybe version 2 is another fee or something like that. But I'm definitely a big believer that these days price can be a difference maker because of that whole VC model where you got to charge a whole bucket load of money,
Yeah.
and then you simply price out a lot of individual people who would use it, who need to use it, who could be your entryway into bigger opportunities, but you price them out and you lose them automatically.
Yeah, it's something that we've looked at already. So, you call out Hootsuite to get the sort of the feature rich offering. You're right, it's around sort of £250
Yep.
a month. But that brings with it 5 seats. But if you're only one individual, you don't need
Yep.
5 seats. So why are you paying 5 licenses?
Exactly.
And similarly on the
Exactly.
channels, if you don't know where it performs best, you kind of want to go for this sort of spray and pray approach where you
Yep.
you get your message out there across all these different channels. But if you can't afford to do that and you're
Yep.
trying to sort of test the market and find out where your potential customers are, that it just restricts you. So, from our pricing perspective and, our vision statement, we're sort of saying, well, we want you to maximize your social media impact.
Yep.
And what that then means is that we don't put restrictions on the number of channels that they can bring in.
Yep.
We want you to actively get out there because, as certainly as we start to move to the AI version down the line, the more content that we've got across more different platforms and different accounts, it gives us more data to actually train our models on and start to really shape that content up. It's to our benefit as well that we're building that in. And from our first sort of seed round and what we're looking to grow up, we're actually focusing really on that startup space, where it
Yep.
is one individual quite often that is
Yep.
really, really time poor. How can we make that sort of initial content creation aspect super, super slick? Get it
Yep.
so that you can get it out there. How do you get templates? You mentioned Canva. That's one of the items that we're looking to bring in, where you can actually just, instead of doing an attachment, you actually fire up Canva within,
Yep.
create your asset itself, and then it brings it back in. So again, it removes that friction between the two. We're currently trying to finalize a deal with Canva where we've actually got that bundled within our subscription costs. So again, you've got simplicity as a business around the number of payments that you've got going out and
Yep.
reconciling that. So it's all about that, really trying to make it a one-stop shop, trying to make it as easy as possible and as slick as possible. Is what you're saying actually is really, really validating, because this is the sort of approach that we're trying to put together for how we build the business out. And these are the pain points that everyone that we're speaking to validates. Really, it is hard. You look at the number of social networks that are out there, and they come out of the sky almost. That all
Yep.
of a sudden, you've got to fight on that front. And it's one of the things that we've actually built in as a foundation, that we said, well, we want to be multi-platform first. So any platform that comes along that's got an API, it
Yep.
takes us about 2 weeks to integrate that platform in now. And it then becomes part of the publishing framework. So, it doesn't matter that, this new one comes out of left field and you didn't expect to have to fight on that front. So long as we do the development work, it's there and it's ready. And it, again, because we don't charge any extra, it becomes available to you to actually use on the platform and start to publish your content out. So there's a hell of a lot that you're saying actually that is really, really, really validating and really, really encouraging. That the one-time sort of approach, that's something that we probably should look at, particularly given that we're focusing really quite heavily on the startup space. Then
Yep.
it's a little bit your startup capital, but actually you then know that your social media requirements are not something that you've got to budget for. And it's that ongoing budget, isn't it? People can find, they can find the
Yep.
the credit card once off and this sort of thing, but if they've got the ongoing drip 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 that's coming out of the account, it's really quite painful.
Absolutely. And I think especially for those businesses that should look at this type of model are the ones that are not business or life critical. And I did a post about that a while ago. Like if you're an HR tech, right? The business critical tool is the ATS, right? You need to hire employees. So you need the whole process. That's a business critical tool. You can't hire people without that. But if you wanted to do thing with mental health or team engagement or learning and development, right? Those things aren't business critical. They're super important, don't get me wrong, but they're not
Yeah.
business critical. The same thing with life, right? I exercise and I run regularly. Every day I get a prompt in Strava. Upgrade your plan for this, upgrade your plan for that. Like I mean, I'm always interested to see, what my breakdown is, what the heart zone rate changes and all this things. Like that's interesting to me. But I'm not paying you even $5 a month for that
Yeah.
information. If you told me, hey, pay $10 once, I'll pay $10 for that. Like I've definitely bought those apps like sleep tracking ones and other ones that are like, yeah, it's $5, $10. I get enough value out of that because the product is not in essence getting so much better, or it's not getting so many more additional features all the time and totally different bits of functionality that, like, yes, it qualifies that. If you're just tracking my runs and giving me like analytics and stats on my runs, like
Yeah.
I'm not training for the marathon, so I don't need you to give me the ability. Okay, now sprint this amount of time. Okay, now slow down and like give me no race prep. I don't need that. So for me, that's not a life
Yeah.
critical product. So I'm not going to pay a SaaS
And
model
and
for
they've
that.
built the functionality. You've gone
Yeah,
ahead, you've built it. You now, it's about sort of monetizing that, making the profit on top of it. But it almost feels greedy. If
yeah,
you're not providing that ongoing value, then why should you be charging for it? And if you are genuinely saving sort of time and solving business problems on a day-to-day basis, then absolutely,
yeah,
people will pay for it. Time is money, and that's absolutely right. Push it so far.
And like the idea, what I like to compare it is you're basically renting, right? On the SaaS models, you're renting your software, or you're renting a car. Like if you bought out the car for, let's say, the one time payment, right? You bought your car. That car, depending how you treat it, could last for God knows how long. But at some point, you're going to replace that car. And I think it's even the same thing with software, where you can use a certain product for so long, right, and get the full value out of it. But then at some point, like there's maybe so much more features in the next version that it validates going to the next version. I remember going back. This is probably my early startup days. There was a product called Text Expander. It was basically, you typed in like a keyword like OMW, and it expanded it out to, whatever, on my way. And it was game changing, especially for some of those things like repetitive things, especially like customer support tickets, like introductions. Like, oh my god, this was like the greatest thing ever. And I paid, I don't know, it was like $59 or $79, and I probably used it for like 3 4 years until it got to like a version, I think it was like five. Like they went up to version, I had a like one that went up to four, and then required another payment. But that improvement from like the four to five was just valuable enough that, you know what, I'll absolutely
Yeah,
pay another $49. Or I got a new MacBook that doesn't support the old, hardware. This was so game changing to me. It's such a huge thing for my life. I'll absolutely pay another $59 on my new computer with the better hardware to use this product again, like no questions asked. So I think even in that sense, where it's not, in essence, pay once and don't ever pay again, right? You pay once and you use it for a year, 2 years, right? And then maybe again, all this functionality, like AI is probably a great example, right? Your product now, if you want to do that model, sans AI, right? You get all the versions, but once you get like the AI piece in there, okay, maybe that's another version. That's
gotta pay
another
again.
upgrade,
Yeah,
the AI version. And if you want to keep on this track, keep on that track. But if you want the AI piece on top of it, okay, that's another payment. But you validated the impact you make for the regular business. Hey, and I can understand how much AI will even make it better. Yeah, I'll pay for it. Especially again, it's like a one-time payment. Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's a lot to be said for that, and it takes away the absence of the features. You can say, right, okay, here's your entry point.
Yep.
You're paying for that. It doesn't have X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
AI is a prime one. Okay, you're accepting the limitation, aren't you?
I had this conversation earlier with AI. Like AI is great for automation, nothing more than that. Now, AI, I think, is great
Mm,
for those cases where you give it something and say rewrite this or recreate this, but creating its own content, AI is just not there. So all these products that are sticking AI in here, okay, we're going to automatically create your back. Hey, I think that would be pretty interesting. Like if this was just like an audio recording, and you had an AI that could take it, add text for subtitles, find the right images to change notes. So there's a change of screen on that whatever Instagram video every 5 10 seconds, and it did that really well. I think that'd be a pretty good use case for AI. But is AI there yet? No, no, A is not there yet.
no, and it's garbage in, garbage out. And this
Absolutely.
is one of the things that we're looking at from the Marvin side, that we realize that we've got to build up that battery of users, have put the content in, they've taken the time to craft it through manually to use the perfect versions. And you can use accelerators. One of the things that we're
Sure.
putting in very early in the product is your equivalent of your chat GPT, where you say, give me a tweet that says this.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, it does that, but you're going to look like everybody else that's out there that's doing very similar prompts. How many today will have been, give me a tweet about Valentine's Day, give me a
Yep.
LinkedIn post about Valentine's Day, for example. That type of content, it all looks the same, but we want to go further than that. We want
Absolutely.
to put the tone in there. We've already got the content rules, which are, even just some of the early testing that we've done around content rules. You'd think it would be fairly easy for AI to say, right, okay, create me a tweet that's under 280 characters. And even that, a really, really simple use case,
Yep.
it struggles to do that. We've been asked already about multilingual within, and
Yep.
saying, right, okay, you've created a tweet, you've written it in English. Okay, now go turn that into 20 different languages. Okay, fine, it does, but the translation, that doesn't come in at under 280 characters, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden, what do you do with that? How do you
Correct.
translate that down? So, the challenges that are in there, just purely on that really, really simple use case of character limits, challenging enough. And
Yeah.
then when you go, well, actually, make it look like my brand identity, make it
Hmm.
fit with the tone of the platform, all
Yep.
of that, rather than it looking like a robot that's just gone and bashed some text out for you.
Yeah.
That's where we want to be that true differentiator. And, will we be able to achieve it? I don't know. That's certainly the aspiration of where we're shooting for. And what I do know is that as we get more and more data in there
Yep.
and are able to train the models around that, then that gives us a greater fighting chance of being able to do that, as opposed to somebody that's literally just going, give me a
Yep.
tweet, which is not where we want to be.
And that's, I think, the important thing. What I like your approach, and I think that was also, again, going back to Jason Fried and DHH, they had a post last year. No, we're not adding AI into the product yet, right? AI isn't good enough. It doesn't add enough value. Once we find a place that it does, we'll add into the product. So I think the idea that you have is collecting all this data first, building your language models on there. Because I've had a couple conversations with people who've been building AI for 20 years, and like the biggest point was not only does need a large amount of data, right? Large, hundreds of millions of rows, but more importantly, it needs clean data. And in the history of startup world, no startup has ever made clean data ever. It doesn't make sense to have clean data early on. So if you're trying to build that, trying to do it at the same time, right? I think that was when my post we started maybe the conversation at the beginning, or maybe it was offline about AI being the graveyard of startups for 2025. For that, I think concept of AI is still expensive for the back end to host it, and that price then automatically goes to the customer. But the output isn't good enough yet. Like even in Canva,
Yeah.
25 billion something dollar company, use the image editor. Images aren't good. I use Notion. Write me this thing. Notion, however many billions of dollars that company's worth. That product, the output isn't good because it's not there yet.
Yeah.
So if you keep charging people money and giving them an output that isn't good enough for them to use, how long are they actually going to pay you for? And again, that's my
Yeah.
essence of that'll be the end of many startups over the next year because of that reason. So I very much appreciate that post. Get the data in there first, then use the AI on top of it once you have enough data to actually make it valuable versus trying to stick it in from now. Oh yeah, AI, everyone has AI. Like,
Yeah, it's
give me a break.
AI for the sake of AI.
Yeah.
And it's like just because you want to be, catching investors' ears and things like that. And
Yep.
we're being very transparent about it. We're going to put prompts in there because it's what users want to sort of get
Sure.
them going, and it provides that. But it's done with the caveat that it is limited. It is an accelerator,
Yep.
and the thing that we're saving you there at that time is effectively the copy and paste over from ChatGPT. That's all
Yep.
we're trying to save you. The fractional seconds, but if you're an individual and you're trying to do this across however many channels, nibble time saving. But
Absolutely.
down the line, there is a genuine use case there.
For
As
sure.
you say, it's got to have the data, and until you actually build that out, you haven't got
It's
a
just
cat in
not
hell's
valuable
chance
enough.
of trying to produce anything.
Yeah.
No, it's all going to read the same. You see it every time. They always start with the emojis and same
Yep.
sort of cheesy entries and things like that. And it's like you can tell it's gone through
Yep.
a chat GPT to produce that post. The best ones look, use it as a basis and then add your own flair, add your own character. And that's where people start to see you as a business or an individual, and they want to take that content and
Yep.
engage with it because it resonates.
Yep.
The robotic, straight off the bat, that doesn't resonate. It just gets you to something that you can join the dots yourself, and you've
Yep.
then got to join the dots, color it in, and make sure that it looks like a picture that people want to engage with, and that's really where it's coming from, and where we're at the moment.
Amazing. So, Alex, greatly appreciate you joining for the inaugural episode of, like, oh, maybe we'll call it office hours. I don't know what I'll end up, but this portion of the content, podcast being called. Maybe I like the idea of office hours, but we'll see. And very much appreciate you joining today.
Likewise, it was good chat and definitely given me plenty to think about there. And as with every conversation, when you're a startup, you come off a conversation, it goes, damn, I've got some more actions to do now.
That's where it's supposed to be. So, for anyone who's going to listen to this in the future, they want to get a hold of you, they want to learn more about Marvin. Tell us where to find you, where to find Marvin.
So Marvin itself is on sharewithmarvin.io, as it sounds. And if they want to get hold of me, best place to contact is via LinkedIn. So just for Alex Feltwell on LinkedIn. I think that there aren't too many of us out there, and connect through there and happily sort of have a chat with you and find out how we can solve your problems.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, I think well, maybe we'll continue this conversation after I hit the stop button because as I said I was looking for this exact tool earlier today. So I'm happy to be one of your early testers.
Yeah, it's all about feedback. At the moment we're not even charging. We're going out there. We want to validate the product. We want to get that feedback in there, and that's actually more important to us than any sort of fractional revenue that we get in the early stages. It gets blown out if we can make the thing a success. So it's about that feedback and build, test, learn.
That's definitely what the pilot and early users or beta users are for. It's not for the revenue, it's for the feedback to make a better product that's more valuable once
Yeah.
you've released it to the public. Amazing. Alex, thank you so much for joining. Until the next episode, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something you can walk away with. If you enjoy this content, please do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel, like the videos, leave comments, and share with another founder that you know who'd benefit. If you'd like to join me as a future guest on the podcast, feel free to reach out to me via email, scott@zeros2ones.com, or via LinkedIn.